Lieutenant Jake Morrison pressed his face against the viewing window of the transport shuttle as they approached Nexus Prime. The massive space station hung in the void like a metal flower, its 5 arms stretching out in perfect symmetry. Each arm belonged to a different alien species, and at the center sat the neutral meeting halls where galactic business happened. "First time seeing it?" asked Lisa Parker, the communications officer sitting beside him. Her blonde hair was pulled back in regulation style, but her eyes sparkled with the same wonder Jake felt. "Yeah," Jake replied. "Hard to believe something this big can just float out here." Tony Rodriguez, their security chief, looked up from his equipment check. "Wait until you see the inside. I've been here twice before. The place is incredible." Their pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Docking in 5 minutes. Make sure your translation devices are working. We got meetings with 4 different species today." Jake touched a small device behind his ear. The translator would convert alien languages into English instantly. Without it, diplomatic missions would be impossible. He had studied 3 alien languages at the academy, but there were hundreds of species in the galaxy. As they docked, Jake noticed something odd. The alien dock workers moved with unusual care around their shuttle. They kept their distance and bowed slightly whenever they thought the humans weren't looking. Jake had seen his behavior before on other worlds, but he always assumed it was just alien politeness. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal, and the air smelled of recycled atmosphere mixed with alien scents Jake couldn't identify. A tall, blue-skinned Andorian waited to greet them. His name was Veltar, according to Jake's briefing files. The alien wore formal robes, and his 4 arms were positioned in what Jake knew was a respectful greeting. "Welcome, honored humans," Veltar said in accented but clear English. "We are pleased to host these negotiations." Jake stepped forward and offered his hand. Veltar hesitated for just a moment before accepting the handshake. His skin felt cool and slightly rough. "Thank you for arranging this meeting," Jake said. "We're looking forward to working with the Zephyrian Collective." As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake noticed more strange behavior. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes stopped what they were doing to watch the humans pass. Some bowed. Others simply stared with what looked like awe. A group of insect-like creatures actually stepped aside and pressed themselves against the wall as the humans approached. "Is it always like this?" Lisa whispered to Tony. Tony shrugged. "Pretty much. I figure they're impressed by our reputation. Humans have made quite a name for ourselves in the galaxy." The meeting hall was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed a projection of the local star field. Representatives from the Zephyrian Collective were already seated around a circular table that could accommodate dozens of different body types. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin and large black eyes. They wore simple robes and moved with fluid grace. Their leader, someone called Prime Speaker Zardich, rose as the humans entered. "We greet you in peace," Zardich said, her voice musical and strange. "May these talks bring prosperity to both our peoples." The negotiations began smoothly. The Zephyrians wanted to establish trade routes through human space, offering rare minerals in exchange for human technology and agricultural products. It was a fair deal that would benefit both species. But Jake noticed the same odd deference here that he had seen in the corridors. The Zephyrians spoke carefully, almost nervously. They agreed to human terms without much argument and seemed eager to please. During a break, Jake found himself alone with Veltar in a side chamber. The Andorian was studying a datapad, but he looked up when Jake approached. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said. "Of course, Honored One." "Why do you call us that? Honored Ones? And why does everyone act so careful around us?" Veltar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which Jake knew was a sign of surprise among his people. "You do not know?" Veltar asked quietly. "Know what?" The Andorian looked around nervously, as if making sure they were truly alone. "Your people are special. Surely your leaders have told you this." Jake frowned. "Special how?" Veltar seemed to struggle with his words. "It is not my place to explain, but there are laws, ancient laws that all species follow. Laws about your kind. Before Jake could ask more questions, Lisa's voice called from the main chamber. The negotiations were resuming. The rest of the day passed without incident. The trade agreement was finalized, documents were signed, and hands were shaken all around. The Zephyrians seemed relieved when it was over, as if some great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. That evening, the human delegation was given luxury quarters in the station's diplomatic section. Jake found himself unable to sleep, thinking about Veltar's strange words. What laws was he talking about? What made humans so special that entire alien civilizations treated them with such obvious reverence? He had always been proud of humanity's achievements. In just a few centuries, they had gone from a single world to a growing interstellar civilization. They had fought wars, won victories, and earned their place among the galactic community through strength and determination. But this felt different. This wasn't a spec earned through military might or technological achievement. This was something deeper, something that seemed built into the very fabric of how aliens viewed humans. Jake got up and walked to the viewing window in his quarters. The stars stretched out in all directions, countless points of light representing countless worlds and species. Somewhere out there were the answers to his questions. He thought about the way the dock workers had bowed, the way the Zephyrians had spoken so carefully, the way Veltar had called him Honored One with such obvious sincerity. What weren't they telling him? What laws govern how aliens treated humans? And why did humanity know about them? As he stared out at the stars, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. There were secrets in the galaxy, old secrets that his own species didn't understand. And somehow, he sensed that those secrets were about to become very important. In the distance, something flashed among the stars. Probably just a ship jumping to hyperspace. But for a moment, just a moment, it looked like something much larger and much older had stirred in the depths of space. Jake shook his head and returned to his bed. Tomorrow they would return to Earth, mission accomplished. But the questions would remain, growing stronger with each passing day. He didn't know it yet, but those questions were about to be answered in the most terrifying way possible. The explosion ripped through the diplomatic quarter of Nexus Prime at exactly 0347 station time. Jake Morrison was thrown from his bed as the walls shook and emergency lights bathed everything in red. Alarms screamed through the corridors as he struggled to his feet. "Lisa! Tony!" he shouted, grabbing his uniform from the floor. His door slid open and Tony Rodriguez appeared, weapon drawn and face grim. "We're under attack." Something big just blasted through the outer hull. Lisa Parker stumbled out her quarters, her hair disheveled but her eyes sharp and focused. "I can't reach the shuttle. Communications are jammed across all frequencies." Through the viewing windows, Jake could see dark ships moving against the stars. They were unlike anything he had seen before, angular and brutal, covered in spikes and weapon ports. Their hulls were painted with red symbols that seemed to writhe in the emergency lighting. Krovar, Tony spat, recognizing the ships. What the hell are they doing here? The Krovar were known throughout the galaxy as a warrior species. They were tall, reptilian creatures with thick armor-like skin and a culture built around combat and conquest. But they had never attacked a neutral station before. They had never attacked humans before. The floor shuddered again as more explosions echoed through the station. Jake could hear weapon fire in the distance, and the screams of aliens fleeing to the corridors. "We need to get to the command center," Jake said. "Find out what's happening." They moved through the shaking corridors, passing groups of panicked aliens. But something was wrong. The aliens weren't just running from the Krovar attack. They were running from everything, even each other. Jake saw an Andorian merchant abandon a cart full of valuable goods just to get away faster. A group of Zephyrian diplomats huddled in a side chamber, whispering prayers in their musical language. The command center was in chaos. Station Commander Thrix, a four-armed being from a Nexus species, was shouting orders while his staff worked frantically at control panels. Sparks flew from damaged systems and smoke filled the air. "Commander!" Jake called out. "What's the situation?" Thrix turned, and Jake saw real fear in the aliens' large eyes. "Krovar Raiders. A full battle group. They're demanding we surrender all humans on the station. What? Lisa stepped forward. Why would they want us specifically? I don't know, Thrix replied. This is madness. No one attacks Nexus Prime. No one attacks. He stopped mid-sentence, as if he had been about to say something he shouldn't. More explosions shook the station. Through the command center's main viewing screen, Jake could see Crovar boarding pods attaching to hull like metal parasites. They're coming aboard, Tony said, checking his weapon. How many security personnel do we have? Thrix's expression grew even more desperate. My people are evacuating. I can't ask them to fight. Not for this. Not against this. Jake stared at the alien commander. You're abandoning your own station? You don't understand, Thrix whispered. What they're doing. It cannot be allowed. The consequences. Before he could explain further, the command center doors exploded inward. Crovar soldiers poured through the breach, their weapons ready and their reptilian faces twisted in savage grins. The Crovar were even more intimidating in person. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor, plating that gleamed like metal. Their eyes were small and red, set deep in skull-like faces. Each warrior carried weapons that looked capable of punching through starship hulls. The leader pushed forward, his armor decorated with battle honors and rank insignia. This had to be War Commander Thexkar, according to Jake's military briefings. Humans, Thexkar growled, his voice like grinding stone. You will come with us. Tony raised his weapon, but 3 Crovar soldiers immediately aimed at him. The odds were hopeless. Why? Jake asked, trying to buy time. What do you want with us? Thexkar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your species is hidden behind ancient fears too long. Today, the Crovar Collective proves that humans are not untouchable. Today, we show the galaxy that we fear nothing and no one. Ancient fears? Jake glanced at Lisa and Tony, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. I don't know what you're talking about, Jake said. Of course you don't, Thexkar snarled. Your people have forgotten your own history, but others remember. Others still whisper the old warnings. Today, those warnings are proven false. The Crovar soldiers moved forward, energy restraints ready. Jake knew they had no choice but to surrender. Fighting would only get them killed, and he still needed answers. We'll come peacefully, Jake said, but you're making a mistake. Thexkar's laugh was even more chilling the second time. The only mistake was waiting this long. The restraints locked around their wrists with a soft hum. Jake felt his strength drain away as the energy fields activated. Lisa gasped as the same thing happened to her, and Tony cursed under his breath. As they were led from the command center, Jake noticed that all the alien staff had vanished. Commander Thrix was gone, along with his entire crew. The humans were alone with their captors. The corridors were eerily quiet now. No more weapon fire, no more running aliens. Even the emergency alarms had stopped. The only sounds were their footsteps and the hum of the Crovar weapons. Where's everyone? Lisa whispered. One of the Crovar guards struck her with the butt of his weapon. Silence, human! They were taken to a Crovar transport ship that had docked with the station. The interior was dark and filled with the smell of metal and alien sweat. Jake, Lisa, and Tony were thrown into a holding cell barely large enough for all 3 of them. The door slammed shut with a resonant clang, leaving them in near darkness. Well, Tony said, testing the strength of the cell walls. This is new. Through a small window, Jake could see Nexus Prime growing smaller as the Crovar ship pulled away. But something else caught his attention. Ships were leaving the station in all directions, streams of vessels fleeing like insects from a disturbed nest. Look at that, he said. Everyone's evacuating. Lisa pressed her face to the window. It's not just the station. Look at the space lanes. She was right. The normal traffic patterns around Nexus Prime had completely collapsed. Ships were scattering in all directions, some not even bothering to follow proper navigation routes. They're not just running from the Crovar, Jake realized. They're running from us, from what happened to us. In the distance, something else was happening. Lights were flickering on across the hull of abandoned ships and stations. Ancient-looking devices that had been dark for who knew how long were suddenly glowing with new power. Jake felt a strange sensation, like an itch in the back of his mind. For just a moment, he thought he heard voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize but somehow understood. Then the feeling passed, leaving him confused and slightly dizzy. "Did you feel that?" Lisa asked softly. Before Jake could answer, the ship shuddered as it jumped to hyperspace. They were being taken somewhere far from Nexus Prime, far from any help. But as the stars stretched into lines outside their window, Jake noticed something troubling. Other ships were following them, ships that hadn't been there moments before, moving with impossible speed and purpose. The violation had been committed, the law had been broken, and somewhere in the galaxy, something ancient was beginning to wake up. Captain Alex Turner was reviewing morning reports at Marine Base Quantico when every computer screen in the building suddenly went white. For 3 seconds, there was complete silence. Then, one by one, systems he had never seen before came online. "Sir," called Sergeant Kim from the communications desk. "We're getting power readings from Bunker Complex 7. Alex frowned. Complex 7 had been sealed for decades. According to the files, it contained old equipment from the early space colonization days. Nothing that should be operational. That's impossible. 7 has been dark for 40 years. "Sir, I'm showing full power, environmental systems active, and something else. Something big is running down there." Alex walked to the main display screen. A schematic of the base appeared, but it was different from any map he had seen. New sections were highlighted, underground levels that weren't supposed to exist. And at the bottom, something pulsed with steady rhythm like a heartbeat. "Give me a security team," Alex ordered. "Full gear. We're going down there." Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in Seattle, Dr. Rachel Kim was staring at her computer screen in disbelief. The genetic samples she had been studying for months were changing, not degrading or corrupting, actually changing their basic structure. She had been researching human evolution patterns when the anomaly began. Every human DNA sample in her lab was showing the same transformation. Dormant genetic sequences were activating, sequences that shouldn't exist according to everything science knew about human development. "This is impossible," she whispered, running the test again. The results were the same. Human DNA was rewriting itself, unlocking codes that had been hidden for millions of years. Her phone rang. It was her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, from the lab in Denver. "Rachel, are you seeing this? Tell me you're seeing this." "The genetic changes?" "Yes." "Marcus, what does this mean?" "I don't know, but it's not just our labs. I've got calls coming in from research facilities across the planet. Every human DNA sample everywhere is doing the same thing." In Detroit, mechanic Steve Collins was having the strangest day of his life. He had been working on an engine when suddenly he could see exactly what was wrong with it. Not just see, he could feel the machine's problems like physical pain in his own body. Every mechanical device he touched afterward responded the same way. His hand seemed to know exactly what each machine needed, even when he was working on models he had never seen before. "Hey, Steve," called his supervisor, Pete. "You okay? You've been standing there staring at that engine for 10 minutes. Steve blinked, realizing he had been lost in thought. But the thoughts weren't his own. He was remembering things that had never happened to him. Vast factories, ships that sail between stars, technology beyond anything Earth had ever produced. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice sounded strange even to himself. At Roosevelt Elementary School in Portland, teacher Amy Watson was reading to her 3rd grade class when the dreams hit. She found herself remembering a war among the stars, battles fought with weapons that turned suns dark, and a great fleet sailing toward the edge of the galaxy. The children looked at her with concern as she stopped reading mid-sentence. "Miss Watson?" asked little Jenny Martinez. "Are you okay?" Amy shook her head, trying to clear the visions. "I'm sorry, children. I need to step outside for a moment." In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to understand what was happening. The dreams felt more real than her own memories. She could remember the faces of people she had never met, places she had never been, and goodbye that had broken her heart millions of years ago. Back at Quantico, Alex Turner and his security team descended into Complex 7. The elevators worked perfectly despite decades of abandonment. The lights turned on as they approached, as if the facility knew they were coming. "Sir," said Corporal Martinez, checking his readings, "the air down here is perfectly breathable. Temperature is exactly 72 degrees. How is that possible?" "I don't know," Alex replied. "Stay alert." They emerged into a vast underground chamber that stretched beyond the reach of their flashlights. In the center stood a massive structure that hummed with power. It looked like no human technology Alex had ever seen, yet somehow it felt familiar. As they approached, panels lit up along the structure's surface. Symbols appeared, not English, not any Earth language Alex knew, yet he could read them perfectly. "Welcome home," the symbols said. "The children have returned." "Sir," whispered Sergeant Kim, "look at this." She was pointing to a wall covered in star maps. But these weren't maps of local space. These showed the entire galaxy, with paths marked between thousands of worlds. At the center of it all was a symbol that looked like Earth, but labeled with a name Alex had never heard, yet somehow knew. "Terra Prima," he read aloud. "The first world." Meanwhile, across the planet, similar discoveries were being made. Military bases worldwide were reporting activation of previously unknown systems. Research facilities found their equipment suddenly capable of tasks far beyond their original design. And everywhere, humans were experiencing the same strange dreams and impossible memories. Dr. Rachel Kim watched her computer screen as the genetic transformation accelerated. The human genome was becoming something new, something that had been waiting to emerge for eons. Her phone rang constantly now, reports from colleagues around the world describing the same phenomenon. "It's like our DNA was programmed," she told her assistant. "As if someone wrote instructions into human genetic code millions of years ago, and they're just now activating." Steve Collins found himself drawn to the old industrial district of Detroit, to buildings that had been abandoned for decades. But when he approached them, they weren't abandoned anymore. Ancient machinery was humming to life, and he knew exactly how to operate every single device. Amy Watson left school early, driven by instincts she couldn't explain. She drove to the outskirts of Portland, to a hill she had never visited. At the summit, she found a structure buried under decades of dirt and vegetation. When she touched it, the metal surface became warm and symbols appeared. "The children are remembering," they said. "The long sleep is ending." Around the world, humans were discovering hidden facilities, buried technology, and genetic memories of civilization that spanned the galaxy. But with the awakening came a growing sense of urgency. Something was wrong. The memories carried warnings about ancient laws and terrible consequences for those who broke them. In space, alien civilizations were in full retreat. Ships fled toward the galactic rim as fast as their engines could carry them. Ancient monitoring stations that had been dark for millennia suddenly blazed with new power, sending signals across the void. The signals all carried the same message, broadcast in every known language and several that had been forgotten. "The law has been broken. The inheritors wake. Flee or face the consequences of harming those under ancient protection." Jake Morrison and his companions, imprisoned on the Crowbar ship, felt the changes too. Jake found he could understand every alien language spoken around him. Lisa discovered she could sense the ship's computer systems and almost communicate with them directly. Tony realized his strength was growing beyond anything humanly possible. But they also felt the anger building in the human collective unconscious. Somewhere in the depths of space, something vast and patient and terribly powerful was stirring to life. The Crowbar had made a mistake. They had harmed humans, breaking a law older than most civilizations. Now, they would learn why that law existed, and why. For millions of years, every species in the galaxy had been very careful never to test it. Ambassador Helen Brooks had served humanity for 30 years in the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. She had negotiated treaties with dozens of species, mediated conflicts across star systems, and thought she understood how the galaxy worked. She was wrong. The emergency communication came through at 0300, waking her from deep sleep. The transmission was marked with the highest priority codes, and the sender made her heart skip a beat. Counselor Veltar of the Andorian Republic was her oldest alien friend. someone she had worked with for over a decade, but she had never heard such fear in his voice. Helen, honored friend, you must listen carefully. Something terrible has happened. The Krovar have taken humans. The law has been broken. Helen sat up in bed, fully awake now. What law, Veltar? What are you talking about? Meet me at the old embassy on Kepler Station. Come alone. Trust no one else with this knowledge. The galaxy itself depends on your understanding. The transmission ended, leaving Helen staring at the dark screen. She had known Veltar long enough to recognize when he was genuinely terrified. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a simple kidnapping. 6 hours later, Helen's personal shuttle docked at Kepler Station. The old diplomatic outpost had been abandoned for years, used now only for the most sensitive meetings. Veltar was waiting in the central chamber, his forearms trembling slightly. "My dear friend," he said, embracing her in the Andorian manner, "I am sorry to be the one to tell you this truth, but your people must know before it is too late. Tell me what, Veltar?" The Andorian gestured to chairs arranged around an ancient holographic projector. "Please sit. This will be difficult to understand." He activated projector, and images filled the air above them. Star maps, ancient symbols, and photographs of archaeological sites from dozens of worlds. "What do you know of human history?" Veltar asked. "We evolved on Earth about 200,000 years ago. We developed civilization, built cities, reached for the stars. The usual story." Veltar shook his head sadly. "No, my friend, that is not your true history. Your people are not native to Earth." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Millions of years ago, long before most current species had even developed intelligence, there was a great empire. They called themselves the first ones, but other species knew them by a different name. They called them the ancients. They called them human." The holographic display showed images of vast cities floating in space, ships the size of moons, and star maps marking territory that covered half the galaxy. "That's impossible," Helen whispered. "The ancient human empire ruled much of this galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. They were not conquerors in the way we understand the term. They were gardeners, shepherds of developing species. Under their protection, thousands of civilizations grew and flourished." Veltar manipulated the controls, and the display showed scenes of humans working alongside alien species Helen recognized. Early Andorians, primitive Zephyrians, dozens of others. But something happened. Veltar continued. "About 5,000,000 years ago, the ancient humans received a signal from beyond the galaxy. Something called to them from the void between galaxies. Their entire civilization simply left." "Left? All of them?" "Not quite all. Before departing, they established colonies on remote worlds at the galaxy's edge. Earth was one of these worlds. They placed genetic templates of their species there, along with guardian systems designed to watch over their children." Helen stared at the images. "You're saying modern humans are descendants of this ancient empire?" "Yes, but that is not the most important part." Veltar's voice dropped to a whisper. "Before leaving, the ancient humans programmed a fail-safe into the fabric of galactic civilization itself. Any species that caused harm to their descendants would trigger the return of their protective systems. The display showed massive structures hidden throughout the galaxy, on dead worlds, in asteroid fields, buried beneath the surface of inhabited planets. For 5,000,000 years, these systems have remained dormant. For 5,000,000 years, every species in the galaxy has known the one unbreakable law: never harm a human. Not because we feared your current military might, but because we feared awakening something far older and more powerful." Helen felt the room spinning around her. "That's why everyone treats us with such deference. You're all afraid." "Not afraid of you," Veltar corrected. "Afraid of what you might become if threatened. The memories are built into your genetic code, waiting to activate. The technology is hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting for the signal to awaken. And the Krovar attack has triggered everything. Even now, the Guardian systems are coming online. Your people are beginning to remember their true heritage. And somewhere in the void, the signal has been sent to call the ancient humans home." Helen stood up, pacing around the chamber. This is insane. You're telling me that humanity is some kind of sleeping giant, and the crowbar just poked us awake. That is exactly what I am telling you. Helen, you must understand, the ancient humans were not just advanced. They were beyond anything we can comprehend. Their technology could move stars, create life, reshape reality itself. They left because they had transcended the need for this galaxy. The holographic display changed again, showing readings from across human space. Power signatures were spiking on every human world. Ancient facilities were activating. Ships were reporting impossible readings from their equipment. It has already begun, Veltar said. Your people are awakening to their true nature. And when they do, the galaxy will never be the same. Helen sank back into her chair. What happens to the crowbar? That depends on your people. The ancient humans were not cruel, but they were absolute in protecting their own. The Crowbar Collective will face judgment. Whether that judgment is merciful or terrible depends on how far the awakening progresses. And the rest of the galaxy? Veltar's expression grew even more somber. We pray that your people remember the wisdom of their ancestors. The ancient humans chose to be gardeners rather than conquerors. We hope their descendants make the same choice. Helen looked at the star maps showing the extent of the ancient human empire. All this time, you've all been deferring to us not out of respect, but out of fear. Not fear, Veltar corrected gently. Your ancestors earned their position through wisdom and strength. They chose to protect rather than dominate. That is why the law exists, not just to protect you, but to protect all of us from the consequences of harming those who carry such power in their blood. The chamber fell silent as Helen processed everything she had learned. Somewhere in the galaxy, her friends Jake, Lisa, and Tony were prisoners of a species that had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. What should I do? She asked finally. Return to your people. Help them understand what they are becoming, and pray that when the full awakening comes, they choose the path of their ancestors. Veltar stood to leave, then paused at the chamber entrance. Helen, there is one more thing. The ancient humans left behind more than just guardian systems and genetic templates. They left behind rules, protocols for what should happen when their descendants were threatened. What kind of protocols? The kind that could remake the galaxy in a single day. The kind that could turn stars dark or make them burn brighter. The kind that could save us all or destroy everything we have built. With that, Veltar departed, leaving Helen alone with the truth that would change everything. Outside the station, across the galaxy, the awakening continued. Ancient systems came online, hidden for millions of years. And in the depths of space, something vast and patient began to stir, responding to the call of its distant children. The Crowbar had violated the one law every species knew. Now, they would learn why that law existed. And so would humanity. Commander Rick Hayes of a UHS Defiant was reviewing patrol reports when his ship began to change around him. It started with small things. Displays showing information that shouldn't exist, systems responding faster than their specifications allowed, and a strange humming that seemed to come from the ship's hull itself. Commander called his pilot, Karen Stevens, from the bridge. We're getting some weird readings from the engine room. Rick made his way to the bridge, noting that the corridors seemed brighter somehow. The usual background noise of the ship's systems had changed to something more musical, almost like a heartbeat. What kind of readings? He asked. Karen pulled up the display. Power output is up 300%, but we're not burning any more fuel. The engines are running cooler than they should be. And, sir, our maximum speed has somehow doubled. Matt Rogers, the chief engineer, appeared on the communications screen from the engine room. His face showed confusion and wonder in equal measure. Commander, you need to see this. The entire engine assembly is rebuilding itself. New components are growing from the existing structure, made from materials I don't recognize. It's like the ship is evolving. Rick felt a strange sensation, as if something in the back of his mind was awakening. Suddenly, he understood exactly what was happening to his ship. Knowledge he had never learned filled his consciousness. Technical specifications for systems that didn't exist, operating procedures for technologies beyond anything humanity had ever built. It's not just evolving, he said quietly. It's remembering. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Jake Morrison sat in his Crowbar prison cell and discovered that the walls could no longer hold him. It started as a tingling sensation in his hands, then grew into something more. When he pressed his palm against a metal barrier, his fingers began to pass through it as if it were water. "Jake," Lisa Parker whispered, "look at your hands." Jake stared in amazement as his hand became translucent, phasing through solid matter with no effort at all. How is this possible? Tony Rodriguez was experiencing his own changes. The energy restraints that had drained his strength were now feeding it instead. He flexed his arms and felt power flowing through his muscles like electricity. When he tested his grip on the metal bench, his fingers left deep impressions in the solid steel. "I feel like I could tear this ship apart with my bare hands," Tony said. Lisa was having the strangest experience of all. She could sense the ship's computer systems around them, feel their electronic thoughts like whispers in her mind. With concentration, she found she could access their functions directly. "The ship's main computer is terrified," she reported. "It keeps trying to shut down weapon systems, but the Crowbar keep overriding it. The computer doesn't want to hurt us." Jake experimented with his new ability, passing his entire arm through the cell wall. "We could escape any time we want." "But where will we go?" Tony asked. "We're in hyperspace on a Crowbar ship." "Actually," Lisa said, her eyes closed in concentration as she interfaced with the ship's systems, "we're not alone out here. There are other ships following us. Lots of them." Back on the UHS Defiant, Commander Rick Hayes was discovering that his ship wasn't the only one changing. Reports were coming in from across the human fleet. Every vessel was undergoing the same transformation. But more than that, ships were moving with new purpose. "Sir," Karen called out, "we're receiving fleet coordination signals, but they're not coming from Fleet Command. They're coming from the ships themselves." "What do you mean?" "The ships are talking to each other directly, coordinating movements without human input. And, sir, they're all heading toward the same location, Crowbar space." Rick felt another wave of inherited knowledge wash over him. He could sense the other human ships across space, feel their awakened consciousness like points of light in his mind. They were no longer just vessels. They were living extensions of human will, guided by technologies that had slept for millions of years. "How many ships?" he asked. Karen checked her displays, her eyes widening. "All of them, sir. Every human vessel in the galaxy is converging on Crowbar territory. Even the civilian transports and mining ships are joining the formation." Matt Rogers appeared on the screen again. "Commander, I'm getting reports from other ships in the fleet. They're all experiencing the same upgrades. But there's something else. New ships are appearing." "What do you mean, new ships?" "Ships that aren't in any registry, appearing from seemingly empty space. They look human, but they're using technology I've never seen. They're joining our formation." Rick walked to the main viewing screen. In the distance, he could see other vessels moving through hyperspace alongside the Defiant. Some he recognized as part of the regular fleet, but others were completely alien to him, sleek, beautiful ships that seemed to bend light around their hulls. "Those are ghost ships," he said, the knowledge coming from somewhere deep in his genetic memory. "Ancient vessels, waiting in hidden space for the call to return." On Earth, Dr. Rachel Kim watched in fascination as the genetic transformation accelerated. The human genome was stabilizing into something new, something that unlocked capabilities that had been hidden for eons. Her laboratory equipment, enhanced by the same awakening process affecting everything human-made, was providing data at impossible speeds. "The changes are complete," she reported to her colleague Marcus Webb. "Whatever we're becoming, the process is finished. And Marcus, the implications are staggering." "How so?" "The genetic modifications don't just enhance physical capabilities. They enhance mental ones too. Pattern recognition, spatial awareness, intuitive understanding of complex systems. It's like our brains are being upgraded to handle information processing that would require supercomputers." Steve Collins, the mechanic in Detroit, found himself drawn to the old industrial complex where ancient machines had awakened. But now he wasn't alone. Hundreds of humans were converging on similar sites worldwide, all guided by the same genetic memories. The buried facilities were fully active now, producing materials and technologies that shouldn't exist. Steve found himself operating massive fabrication systems that created components for purposes he understood instinctively but couldn't explain. "We're building ships," he told Amy Watson, the teacher who had arrived at the same facility. "Not just any ships. Vessels that can travel between stars in ways our current technology can't match." Amy nodded, her hands moving over alien controls with practiced ease. "The memories are getting stronger. I can remember the last time these facilities were used, millions of years ago. We're preparing for something big." Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched in growing terror as human ships moved with impossible coordination toward Krovar space. Ancient monitoring stations that had been silent for eons were broadcasting warnings in languages most species had forgotten. On the neutral world of Centauri Prime, Zephyrian observers watched their long-range sensors with growing alarm. "The humans are moving in perfect formation across dozens of sectors simultaneously," reported Science Director Kalatiech. "Their ships are displaying energy signatures we can't classify. And there are more of them, far more than their official fleet numbers." "How many more?" asked Prime Speaker RTH. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Ships are appearing from empty space, joining their formation. It's as if an entire hidden fleet has suddenly decloaked across the galaxy." The Krovar ship carrying Jake, Lisa, and Tony suddenly shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through their small window, the prisoners could see they had arrived at a massive Krovar military installation. But they weren't alone. Human ships were already there, arranged in perfect formation around the station. Ships that moved like living things. Ships that seemed to bend space around them. Ships that radiated power like small suns. War Commander Thexkar appeared on the cell's communication screen, but his usual arrogance was replaced by obvious fear. "What have you done?" he snarled at Jake. "Were those ships?" Jake smiled, feeling power coursing through his veins and knowledge flooding his mind. "Those are our people coming to get us. And Thexkar, you have no idea how much trouble you're in." Outside, the human fleet waited with infinite patience. Ancient protocols were guiding their actions now, procedures written into the fabric of reality itself by beings who had transcended normal existence. The reckoning had begun. The Krovar would face judgment for violating the oldest law in the galaxy. And for the first time in 5 million years, the sleeping giants of humanity were beginning to wake up. Captain Nina Foster had never moved through space like this before. Her ship, the UHS Vengeance, was traveling at speeds that should have been impossible, using methods that defied everything she thought she knew about physics. Space seemed to bend around them, stars streaking past in patterns that reminded her of ancient artwork. Captain, called her navigator, Lieutenant Sam Bradley, were approaching the Krovar homeworld. ETA in 30 minutes. Any sign of resistance? No, ma'am. Actually, it's the opposite. Krovar ships are running from us as fast as they can. Some of them are even broadcasting surrender signals. Nina felt a strange new awareness that had been growing in her mind since the awakening began. She could sense the other human ships scattered across Krovar space, each one hunting for their captured people with relentless efficiency. Good. Any word from the other search groups? Commander Hayes reports his team found 3 human mining vessels that were being held on Krovar Station Beta. The prisoners are safe. Captain Morris freed a diplomatic team from a Krovar prison ship. And Captain Foster. Sam paused, looking confused. "Captain, are you receiving data directly from the other ships?" Nina realized she was. Information was flowing into her consciousness from dozens of human vessels, positions, status reports, tactical data. It was as if the entire rescue fleet was operating as a single organism. "I think I am," she said. "And Sam, I can sense something else. Jake Morrison and his team are being held at the military installation near the Krovar homeworld. We need to get there fast." Meanwhile, in his prison cell, Jake Morrison was discovering that the Krovar restraints were no longer restraining him at all. His ability to phase through solid matter was growing stronger, and now he could pass through any barrier the Krovar had put in place. "This is incredible," he said, walking to the cell wall and back again. It's like the matter just moves aside from me. Tony Rodriguez was testing his own enhanced strength. The steel bench in their cell now looked like it had been twisted by a giant, reshaped by his bare hands into abstract sculptures. I lifted a piece of the wall earlier, Tony reported. Just grabbed the edge and pulled. It came away like it was made of soft clay. Lisa Parker was deep in communion with the ship's computer systems. Her consciousness flowed through the electronic networks, accessing information that should have been impossible to reach. The Krovar are panicking, she reported. Their command structure is falling apart. Ships are refusing orders. Weapon systems are shutting down on their own, and their communications network is being flooded with surrender requests. Surrender requests? From their own people. Local commanders want to hand over any human prisoners they have and negotiate for mercy, but the Central Command is ordering them to fight. Jake felt a surge of satisfaction, mixed with something darker. The genetic memories were providing him with knowledge of ancient justice protocols, procedures for dealing with species that violated the fundamental laws. They should surrender, he said quietly. It would be better for them. Through their small window, they could see the chaos outside. Krovar ships were fleeing in all directions while human vessels moved with deadly purpose. But the human ships weren't firing. They didn't need to. Their mere presence seemed to be causing Krovar technology to malfunction. War Commander Thexkar appeared on the communication screen again, his reptilian features twisted with rage and fear. Your ships are using some kind of weapon, he accused. Our systems are failing across the entire sector. Jake studied the Krovar leader with new understanding. The genetic memories were providing insights into alien psychology, revealing fears and weaknesses that have been hidden for millions of years. We're not using weapons, Jake said calmly. Your technology is recognizing what we are and refusing to function against us. It's built into the basic programming of every computer system in the galaxy. Never harm a human. That's impossible. No, it's ancient. Your people forgot, but your machines remember. Every piece of technology in this galaxy carries traces of the original programming, installed by the beings who built the first computer networks millions of years ago. Lisa suddenly gasped, her eyes going wide as she accessed deeper levels of the ship's systems. Jake, I can see the override codes. The ancient humans didn't just program protection into the technology. They programmed complete control. I can shut down this entire ship, if I want to. She demonstrated by turning off the gravity in their cell, then turning it back on. Or I can do this, she continued, opening their cell door with a thought. The three humans stepped out into the corridor, no longer prisoners, but something far more dangerous. They could hear alarms blaring throughout the ship, but no Krovar soldiers came to stop them. The ship's own security systems were protecting them now. Outside, Captain Nina Foster's rescue fleet had arrived at the Krovar military installation. The massive fortress hung in space like a metal mountain, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. But as the human ships approached, those defenses began shutting down one by one. Captain, reported Lieutenant Bradley, the station is powering down its weapons. We're receiving a transmission from someone claiming to be the base commander. Put it through. The alien face that appeared on screen was clearly terrified. It was a different Krovar than the one who had taken Jake and his team, this one wearing the insignia of a base commander. Human ships, the alien said, his voice shaking. I am Commander Vestan of Installation Prime. I formally surrender this facility and request mercy under the ancient protocols. We have your people safe and unharmed. Please do not destroy us. Nina felt the collective consciousness of the human fleet processing this information. Decisions were being made at levels beyond normal human thought, guided by protocols older than most civilizations. Commander Vestan, she replied, you will transfer the human prisoners immediately. You will also provide a full accounting of all humans in Krovar custody anywhere in your territory. Yes, immediately. But honored ones, what of War Commander Thexkar? He ordered the attack against our strongest objections. Many of us knew the ancient laws, but he would not listen. Nina felt something cold settle in her consciousness. The genetic memories were providing her with information about ancient justice, about the price that had to be paid for violating fundamental laws. War Commander Thexkar will face judgment, she said, as will any who willingly participated in harming humans. But those who surrender and cooperate will be shown mercy. Back on the ship holding Jake, Lisa, and Tony, the three humans had reached the bridge. Krovar crew members cowered as they approached, but the ship's own systems were facilitating their movement, opening doors and providing access to all areas. War Commander Thexkar stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by his officers. But his usual arrogance was gone, replaced by the desperate fear of a being who had made a terrible mistake. "You cannot do this," he said as Jake approached. "We are a sovereign species. We have rights under galactic law." "You had rights," Jake replied, and his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. "You forfeited them when you violated the oldest law in existence." Tony and Lisa flanked Jake as he continued forward. The three humans no longer looked like the frightened prisoners they had been hours before. They moved with the confidence of beings who understood their true nature, their true power. "The ancient protocols are clear," Jake continued, and somehow every being on the ship could hear his words. "Those who harm the protected children face judgment. Those who surrender and cooperate receive mercy. Choose quickly, War Commander. Our people are here, and their patience has limits." Through the bridge windows, they could see the human rescue fleet surrounding the Krovar installation. The ships hung in space like sleeping predators, radiating power that made the stars themselves seem dim by comparison. The hunt was nearly over. Soon, the captured humans would be free. And then, the real reckoning would begin. War Commander Thexkar looked at the human ships, at the three beings standing before him, and at the future he had created for his people through his arrogance. For the first time in his military career, the proud Krovar warrior felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The Krovar collective was dying, not from weapons or warfare, but from the complete rebellion of their own technology. Across their entire empire, machines that had served them faithfully for centuries were now refusing to function against human targets. On the Krovar homeworld, Supreme Commander Draktar stood in his command center, watching his civilization collapse in real time. Every screen showed the same story: ships unable to fire their weapons, defense systems shutting down on their own, and computer networks displaying messages in ancient languages that roughly translated to protection protocol active. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his chief scientist. "How can every machine in our empire be infected with the same malfunction simultaneously?" Scientist Prime Kolvex looked up from his instruments with terror in his reptilian eyes. "Supreme Commander, it's not a malfunction. It's programming. Original programming built into the very foundation of all galactic technology." "Explain." "The basic computer languages, the fundamental algorithms, even the quantum processing matrices we use, they all trace back to original source code created millions of years ago. Source code that apparently included protection protocols for humans." Draktar slammed his fist on the command table. "You're telling me that our ancestors built our technology with human protection built in?" "Not our ancestors, Supreme Commander. Theirs. The ancient humans who ruled this galaxy before most of our species had even developed fire. They built the technological foundation that every subsequent civilization has used and built upon." On the screen, they watched as another Krovar battle fleet surrendered to approaching human ships. The mighty warships that had terrorized dozens of species were now helpless, their own computers refusing to target the vessels approaching them. War Commander Thexkar's ship was a microcosm of the empire-wide failure. His bridge crew watched in horror as their weapon systems displayed messages they couldn't read but somehow understood. Targeting error, protected species detected, weapons offline, seek mercy. "Override the systems," Thexkar roared. "Use manual controls." "We've tried," War Commander replied his weapons officer. "The manual controls won't respond either. It's as if the ship itself refuses to harm humans." Jake Morrison, Lisa Parker, and Tony Rodriguez stood at the center of the bridge, no longer prisoners, but something far more dangerous. The awakening had progressed to the point where they barely looked human anymore. They radiated power that made the air around them shimmer, and their eyes held depths that suggested vast intelligence and ancient memory. "Your ship recognizes what we are," Jake said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the Crovar crew flinch. "As do all your weapons, all your computers, all your technology. The ancient safeguards are awakening throughout your empire." Tony gestured, and the massive blast doors of the bridge opened without anyone touching controls. "Your machines serve us now, just as they served our ancestors millions of years ago." Lisa's consciousness was flowing to the ship's entire network, accessing systems the Crovar didn't even know existed. "I can see everything," she said softly. "Every Crovar ship, every installation, every computer system in your empire. They're all connected to the ancient network. They're all remembering their true purpose." Outside, the human rescue fleet had grown to impossible proportions. Ships continued to appear from empty space. Vessels that had been waiting in hidden dimensions for millions of years, answering the call of their awakened descendants. Captain Nina Foster stood on the bridge of the UHS Vengeance, feeling the collective consciousness of the human fleet flowing through her mind. She was no longer just commanding a single ship. She was part of a vast organism that spanned star systems. "Status report," she said, though she already knew the answer through the neural link. "All human prisoners have been recovered," reported Lieutenant Bradley. "The Crovar forces have surrendered in every sector except their homeworld. They're requesting mercy under what they call ancient protocols." Nina felt the cold satisfaction of the genetic memories. Justice protocols written into the fabric of reality itself were finally being activated. The price for harming humans was about to be collected. "Open a channel to the Crovar homeworld," she ordered. Supreme Commander Draktar appeared on the main screen, his proud reptilian features now showing obvious fear. "Human commanders," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I request immediate negotiation to end this crisis. We are prepared to return all prisoners and pay any reasonable compensation." Nina felt the collective human consciousness processing this request. Ancient minds that had transcended normal existence were weighing the Crovar's words against their actions. "Supreme Commander," she replied, "your species has violated the oldest law in the galaxy. The price for that violation was established millions of years ago, long before your civilization existed." "What price?" Draktar asked, though his expression suggested he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. "Complete technological submission. Your empire will become a protectorate under human authority. Your military will be disbanded. Your leaders will face individual judgment based on their level of participation in harming our people." The Crovar leader's face went pale. "You're demanding the end of our sovereignty. We're implementing the consequences that were always programmed into the situation. Your ancestors agreed to these terms when they first accessed the Galactic Technology Network. The contracts were built into the code itself. On Earth, the awakening was reaching its peak. Dr. Rachel Kim watched as the final genetic transformations completed themselves. Humans worldwide were exhibiting capabilities that seemed magical: telepathic communication across vast distances, direct interface with any technology they touched, and physical abilities that defied conventional understanding. "The changes are stabilizing," she reported to her research team. "But we're not becoming something entirely new. We're becoming something very old, something we always were, but had forgotten." Police Officer Danny Walsh in Chicago found himself able to sense the emotional states of every person in his precinct, human and alien alike. The alien visitors who had been in the city on diplomatic missions were broadcasting terror so intense he could feel it from blocks away. Nurse Claire Thompson in Boston discovered she could diagnose medical conditions just by being near patients. More remarkably, she found she could heal minor injuries just by touching them, as if her body understood biological processes at a fundamental level. "It's not magic," she explained to her amazed colleagues. "It's science. Very advanced science that our ancestors understood perfectly." Back on the Crovar ship, War Commander Thexkar finally broke. The proud warrior who had thought he could demonstrate his species' superiority by harming humans now knelt before the three beings he had captured. "I beg for mercy," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't understand. No one told us what you really were." Jake looked down at the kneeling Crovar with eyes that held the memory of ancient civilizations. Ignorance is no excuse for violating fundamental law, but it can be a reason for mercy. He gestured, and the ship's communication system activated on its own. Attention, all Crovar forces. This is Jake Morrison, speaking for humanity. Your war commander has surrendered. Any forces that continue to resist will face the full consequences of their actions. Those who surrender immediately will be treated with the mercy our ancestors showed to species who made similar mistakes. Throughout Crovar space, the message was received by commanders who have been watching their technology turn against them. One by one, entire fleets began broadcasting surrender signals. On the Crovar homeworld, Supreme Commander Draktar looked at his failing systems and made the hardest decision of his career. I surrender the Crovar Collective to human authority, he announced on all channels. May the Ancient Ones show us the same mercy they showed our predecessors who learned this lesson in eons past. The rebellion was over. The law had been enforced. And for the first time in 5 million years, the sleeping guardians of humanity had awakened to protect their children. But the awakening was far from complete. In the depths of space, something much larger was stirring. The signal had gone out beyond the galaxy, calling to minds that had transcended physical existence eons ago. The ancient humans were coming home, and when they arrived, the galaxy would never be the same again. 3 months had passed since the Crovar Collective surrendered, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. The awakening of humanity's true nature had changed everything, but perhaps not in the ways anyone had expected. Ambassador Helen Brooks stood in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, looking out at representatives from hundreds of species. The station had been rebuilt and expanded, its 5 arms now including a 6th dedicated entirely to humanity's growing role in galactic affairs. But the humans weren't ruling through fear or domination. Instead, they were doing exactly what their ancient predecessors had done millions of years ago, serving as guardians and guides for the galactic community. The Terran Protectorate formally accepts the Zephyrian request for technological assistance. Helen announced to the Assembly, our engineers will work with your people to upgrade your defense systems and improve your agricultural output. Jake Morrison, now bearing the title of First Speaker for Humanity, sat at the council table beside her. The awakening had changed him profoundly. He still looked human, but his eyes held depths that suggested vast knowledge and ancient wisdom. When he spoke, his words carried weight that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space. We also approve the establishment of 3 new protected worlds for developing species, Jake added. The Carillion refugees will be given safe haven while their homeworld recovers from the ecological disaster. Lisa Parker, now serving as Director of Technological Integration, managed the complex task of sharing human technology with other species while ensuring it was used responsibly. Her ability to interface directly with computer systems had evolved to the point where she could manage entire networks with thought alone. The new farming techniques are already showing results on 12 worlds, she reported. Crop yields are up 40% across all participating systems, and we're seeing similar improvements in medical technology. Tony Rodriguez had taken on the role of Chief of Galactic Security, overseeing the peaceful integration of former hostile species into the new order. His enhanced abilities made him incredibly effective at detecting deception and preventing conflicts before they started. The former Crovar territories are adapting well to the transition, he reported. War Commander Thexkar has been particularly helpful in educating his people about the ancient laws and protocols. Indeed, Thexkar had undergone the most dramatic transformation of anyone. The proud warrior who had violated the fundamental law now served as an advocate for understanding and cooperation. He stood before the assembly wearing simple robes rather than military armor. My people are grateful for the mercy shown to us, he said, his voice carrying none of his former arrogance. We have learned that strength lies not in conquest, but in service to something greater than ourselves. The awakening had affected every human differently. Some, like Dr. Rachel Kim, have become living interfaces between human and alien biology, capable of healing diseases that had plagued species for millennia. Others, like mechanic Steve Collins, found themselves able to repair and improve technology in ways that seemed impossible. The medical exchange program is exceeding all expectations, Dr. Kim reported via holographic projection from Earth. We've successfully treated 73 previously incurable diseases across 42 species. The genetic memories contain medical knowledge that spans millions of years of galactic history. Steve Collins has been appointed Director of Infrastructure Development, overseeing construction of new space stations, improved transportation networks, and better communication systems throughout the galaxy. The new hyperspace lanes are operational, he announced. Travel time between core worlds has been reduced by 60%, and the new quantum communication network allows real-time conversation across the entire galaxy. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the ordinary humans who had awakened to their heritage. People like teacher Amy Watson and police officer Danny Walsh found themselves serving as cultural bridges between species, able to understand alien psychology and emotion in ways that made peaceful coexistence much easier. The cultural integration programs are working, Amy reported from her new position as Director of Interspecies Education. Human children and alien children are learning together on 12 worlds, and the early results suggest they'll grow up with much better understanding of each other. Danny Walsh had become a mediator, using his enhanced empathic abilities to resolve conflicts between different species. Crime rates are down across all integrated systems, he reported. When people can actually feel each other's emotions, it becomes much harder to justify causing harm. The changes weren't limited to the humans who had awakened. The advanced abilities were starting to manifest in the next generation as well. Human children born after the awakening displayed capabilities their parents were still learning to understand. The children are remarkable, observed Veltar, Helen's old friend from the Andorian Republic. They seem to instinctively understand technologies and concepts that take adults years to master. Helen nodded. They're not learning these things. They're remembering them. Each generation will be closer to what the ancient humans were capable of. As if summoned by their conversation, a presence made itself known in the assembly hall. It wasn't physical. None of the ancient humans who had departed the galaxy millions of years ago had returned in bodily form. Instead, their consciousness touched the minds of everyone present, human and alien alike. The presence was vast and patient, filled with wisdom accumulated over eons of existence. When it spoke, the words formed in each being's mind in their own language and conceptual framework. Children of our blood, inheritors of our legacy, you have remembered well. The galaxy prospers under your care as it did under ours. We are pleased. Jake felt tears streaming down his face as he communed with minds that had transcended physical existence. Are you coming home? We are always home, child. We exist in the spaces between spaces, in the thoughts between thoughts. We departed the physical galaxy to explore greater mysteries, but we never truly left. We have been watching, waiting, proud of what you have become. The presence turned its attention to the alien representatives. Children of younger species, you need not fear. As we were gardeners and guardians in ages past, so too are our inheritors now. They will guide you as you grow, protect you as you develop, and celebrate with you as you discover your own unique gifts. War Commander Thexkar prostrated himself before the assembly. Ancient ones, we beg forgiveness for our transgression. There is nothing to forgive, the presence replied gently. Your species learned the lesson it needed to learn. Some wisdom can only come through experience, even painful experience. You and your people now serve the greater good, with understanding born from that experience. As the presence began to fade, it left one final message. The law that protected our descendants will remain as long as the galaxy endures. But remember, it exists not to separate humans from other species, but to ensure that all species can grow and flourish under protection of those with the wisdom and power to provide it. After the ancient ones departed, the assembly sat in contemplative silence. Finally, Veltar spoke. So begins the second age of the gardeners, he said softly. May it be as wise and prosperous as the first. Helen Brooks looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds, all working together under humanity's guidance toward common goals of prosperity and peace. The ancient law was never harm a human, she realized aloud. It was never harm those who protect you. Our ancestors earned that protection through millions of years of service. Now we must earn it again. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. And we will, one world at a time, one species at a time, one act of service at a time. Outside the station, human ships patrolled the space lanes, not as conquerors or overlords, but as guardians ensuring safe passage for all peaceful travelers. The ancient technologies were being used to heal wounded worlds, improve living conditions, and solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. The Krovar had learned that violating the fundamental law carried consequences beyond imagination, but they had also learned that mercy, when earned through genuine repentance and service, was freely given. The galaxy had a new order now, built not on fear or domination, but on the ancient principles of protection, guidance, and service. The sleeping giants of humanity had awakened, remembered their true nature, and chosen to use their power as their ancestors had, to help all species reach their full potential. And in the depths of space, ancient minds smiled with approval as their inheritors took up the mantle of galactic guardianship once more. The law remained unbroken. The galaxy was safe. And somewhere among the stars, new species were just beginning to develop the intelligence that would one day bring them into the great community of worlds, protected and guided by those who remembered the ancient responsibilities of power. The age of the second gardeners had begun.